Okay, just. Okay, good afternoon and good morning. And let me also say good evening, distinguished ladies and the gentlemen. My name is Ndubuisi, Ekekwe. It's quite a great privilege and honor to come here to have this conversation with eminent leaders of the Igbo nation. I'm speaking today from the United States of America, and it's just for us to look at things from, let me say, multifaceted angle. Hopefully, we can find that path, that trajectory that we need to build an amazing community, an amazing nation of the Alaigbo for every one of us. So today, I will just share a very, very brief presentation, looking at the mechanics, some of the most advanced nations in the world, what they have done, and how they got to where they are today. And to begin that, I will run a slide here, and we can get it started. So let me take us back to that moment in our history. Of course, it's when people are talking about Ukraine today, I can tell you that if you look through what we went through during the Biafran War, that there is just nothing to compare to what Ukraine is going today, to the multiples of paralysis that the Igbo nation suffered during the Biafran War. So we were on ground zero. Our infrastructure, they devastated, and our citizens, they were lost in tens and millions. So we went through that, and many bad things happened. But I also want to note that in that miracle, in that paralysis, we could now see the spirit of the Igbo people. And that spirit of the Igbo people, they come through the people I call the great generation. These are elders in our different communities across all the Igbo nation. The wise elders, they came together just right at the end of the war, say 1970, specifically 1979. They began what I'll call the phase one of our pillars. The phase one of our pillars essentially included a very structured process where across our villages and communities, they asked people, let's come together. Let's come and find a way to build back the Igbo nation, because we do not necessarily expect the national government to be of help. And they went back, created community unions, Ovim Community League, and from Abia State in Ovim, we had the Ovim Community League. The Ovim Community League, just like every other community league across the Igbo nation, they built schools, they built maternities, they built hospitals, the Isukwato General Hospitals from a local government. And even in your own, I am very, very confident that if you go back to your community, to your village, you will see that moment and that transformation. So we saw what I call the pillar one. And within that phase, we could look at those pillars divided into two broad. So they said, how do we educate the future of the Igbo people? How do we also provide healthcare facilities for people? And then also, how do we bring economic opportunity so that our young people can also compete in the future? Remember, the digitalization policy in Nigeria had just happened, basically freezing the accounts of the Igbo people in most banks. So these people were starting at ground zero. But our great generation saw a future that many people would not have seen in that type of a hopeless scenario. So they said, we're going to invest in education. They build schools. They said, we're also going to make sure that our wives, our sisters, our mothers, they will not go to clinics and die. So they build maternities, they build clinics. And they also now look at the economic emancipation, a new Igbo nation, despite the challenges they faced. And that the Onyanga na One Mayor now model started. The Onyanga na One Mayor model basically saying that because opportunities were not there in Igbo nation because the war had just ended and there were really nothing to invest on. People didn't have resources because their bank accounts had been frozen. It means that the little few of us that have traveled to Kanu, Lagos, Ibadan, if you get to Idumota, if you go to Kanu, if something begins to work for you, do not forget your brother, do not forget your sister. And that the Igbo apprenticeship system now came into play. So that process was actually very critical for us to drive a new economic system that make it possible that we can develop our communities. And that really worked magically because people started leaving villages, started going to bigger cities in Nigeria because the Igbo nation, the Igbo land basically was devastated because of the vagaries of war. So they built pillars. And those pillars, today, we can say the world. This is not really what the message I'm going. I'm trying to connect back to the pillars that were built in the time of old and what our own generation we have to do to build our own modern pillars. So if you look at it, the great generation, just after the war, they had a very strategic objective. They wanted to catch up with Nigeria. They don't want to catch up with the developments in other parts of Nigeria. They focused on economic and human development. They made sure that schools were built. They also made sure that young people had opportunities to also go and compete in trade and the whole merchandise enterprise to make sure that people do not go into hunger. So if you look at the results over the last few decades, education, we have caught up with most parts of Nigeria. In WAEC and JAM, the number of graduates per capita, the Igbo land has actually done very, very well. And if you look at every tribe or every location in Nigeria, excluding the indigenous tribe, the propensity that the Igbo nation has the second largest populous tribe after the indigenous people, I think that is self-evident. So when you also look at investment, most of the leading real estate projects across most parts of Nigeria, you always see that an Igbo man or woman is there. And of course, I refer you back to these reports just before we started having difficulties in our communities in Igbo nation. The United Nations noted that in the southeastern part of Nigeria has the best human, in terms of human security within Nigeria. In other words, if you look at the geopolitical zones in Nigeria, that the Southeast has the most human security nation. So the implication is that whatever that great generation did, whatever they did, that thing has worked. They delivered as a promise. And today, we can now build on those pillars upon which they have brought us to catch up with other nations within the country called Nigeria. So today, the question here is that they have done what they have to do. But the question now, how do we now build the next pillars for the next phase of our economic development, of our Igbo nation's development? So the benchmark I want us to see today is no more benchmarking with Kanu, Lagos, benchmark with Ibadan. Now, how do we begin to benchmark with New York, London, Tokyo, and other bigger cities around the world instead of dealing with Ibadan, Lagos, and Nairobi? And that is where I want us to go back. I want us to think forward to see that we need to build a new dimension of pillars, not necessarily the ones that our other citizens built in 1970s. Nigeria's budget is about $42 billion. The budget of South Africa is about $152 billion. The population of South Africa is around 60 million people. The population of Nigeria hovers around 200 million people. So if you look also that in the computation, I had used the official rate of Naira and dollar. If you use the black market rate, which most of us use, you understand that Nigerian budget is less than 35 billion. And of course, our budget execution is never 100%. That means that we can execute it at 80%. It means that we are spending largely around $30 billion when South Africa is budgeting and spending $152 billion. So what does that mean? It means that Nigeria itself cannot even be a benchmark for southeastern Nigeria or the Igbo nation to drive energy for what that future will be. So I want us to go back to what made us great in the 1970s and see how we can build new pillars that will not just be comparing Owerri with maybe Kanu, comparing Enugu with Lagos, that we can actually do better because we are actually at the ground zero. Nothing is really happening. And that is the reason why many people feel that Nigeria has underperformed, which I believe. So I will have this conversation by looking at how we can build those pillars. And to do that, I take you back to these plots. And in this plot, what I have done here is to look at the GDPs of nations over the last 2,000 years. I plotted the GDPs of the most important economies, but just using United States here and China, because they are the two most dominant economies today. If you look here, there is something that is evident. In United States, there was a magical moment here. In China, there was a magical moment here. But these things did not just come by chance. They built pillars, and those pillars made this kind of transformation that the GDP of a nation was flat for more than many centuries. All of a sudden, the GDP started going up. And also the GDP of a nation here is also flat for many centuries. All of a sudden, it started going up. What did they do? And what can the Igbo nation learn so that we can do the same thing? So that we are not stopped in the largely hopeless scenario of the Nigerian country. So I'll take you back, of course, when I first took economics in school. If you go back here, one of the things you see here is that if the GDP is constant and the population is increasing, it means that per capita income was decelerated. In other words, more people are sharing the little that you have. So the little that is available will be shared by more people. It means that a generation of people that lived here were actually poorer than people that lived here because population was increasing constantly as you come into the human history. So poverty was being scaled from one generation to the other. If you go back to agricultural science in secondary school or economics or biology, you must have come across Reverend Malthus. Reverend Malthus was the priest who postulated that food production was going in arithmetic progression while the population was going geometric progression. In other words, if we do not change the trajectory, how much food we are producing and the population that was coming in the world, we're just going to run out of food one day and people will die. Because the world was in this state. But I also want to explain that before here, there were very brilliant people. Some of the most fundamental constructs in physics, mathematics, and biology and chemistry, they were conceived by people that lived here. In other words, just before the last 500 years, people that lived here gave us the compounds. They helped us to understand our universe. They helped us to build the fundamental elements upon which we are building artificial intelligence systems today, building all these vaccines, but many of them were poor. They died very poor. They were living in what I have called the invention society. Invention society is a society of ideas. Invention society is a society where people just come up with ideas, but they never have the opportunity of translating those ideas into products and services. And when you do not have the capacity to translate ideas into products and services, you stall as a people. So what is going on here is they created compounds, but they could not create vaccine. And when tuberculosis came, it killed them. They created compounds, but they could not make vaccines. And when polio came, it killed them. That did not mean they were not smart. We can say that the Igbo nation today, we are still stuck here. With all due respect, gentlemen and ladies. We are still an invention society. There are a lot of ideas in the Igbo nation. There are a lot of ideas in Abia Palace in Aba. There are a lot of ideas as you enter a parks, motor parks in Enugu. People have ideas how to fix electricity, clean water, practically anything you can think of. But tomorrow, next tomorrow, nothing has changed. That invention society era has to be transmuted into what I've called innovation society. Innovation society is a society that does not just focus on ideas, but actually have the capacity to transition from ideas and give you products and services. Because products and services are things that actually make it possible that people can fix challenges they have in their lives. So the question here today for us, how do we move the Igbo nation from the invention society to becoming an innovation society? And it comes down to some pillars that in my work I have identified the countries that have made that translation. They have built to make it possible for them to move from that invention to that innovation society. Of course, here you have the Obas and Obis and Amas, but if you don't do that translation, nothing will happen. So to get into those pillars, I will connect three things here. The first is here, America was born, 1790. They built one of the finest world property rights. And property rights is basically the right to own property, the right also to sell the property, and bringing a legal ordinance, making it possible that the velocity of the translation of that property from one person to the other can actually be done harmoniously. And later on also, China did the same thing. Now, if you go through human history, there's one thing that has been constant. When people deepen their property rights, they advance economically. And no nation has been able to advance economically without building a regime of property. In other words, no matter what Nigeria does, until we can get our property rights right, we are going to have a ceiling of our economic capacity to advance as a people. And I'll tell you with a very practical example. Today, we have all these startups in Lagos, in Nairobi, in Accra. They are raising millions of dollars every day. I mean, today I invested, one I just posted it on my blog. I think within this week alone, we've invested in 5 startups. Sometimes we get $100,000, sometimes $50,000, sometimes $300,000. So we have this mechanism of releasing that capital, and they have done very, very well. But there is one thing that has made that process easy. There was an innovation a group of young people figured out. I have called it the Delaware innovation. Delaware is a state in the United States of America. So what do we do? You say you have a good idea. Say, fine. I said, what is that company located? You say it's somewhere in Africa, maybe. Let's say it's in Abuja. Interestingly, no one is going to give you a lot of money if that company is registered in Nigeria. We say you have to go and re-register it. We call it flipping, Delaware flipping. You flip it to Delaware so that the legal ordinance, which now guides that company, is now backed by the United States legal system so that we have confidence that we can give you money and go and sleep. Because if you give the guy $1 million and in Abuja, he can go in, he just believe that tomorrow morning he can visit one crooked public servant who will now manipulate the ownership of that company. All of a sudden, you are no more part of that system. So what I'm pointing out here is that a property rights regime in Nigeria has actually made it nearly impossible for people to unlock the capital they needed. But through this innovation, that has been fixed. So by having that Delaware innovation, it has made it possible that young people has unlocked millions of dollars. In Nigeria last year, they raised more than $1.6 billion. Before, no one was able to do that. And of course, with property rights, capital came. You cannot really bring that capital without that property rights. And that is a reason for that. If you go back here, the men and women who created compounds in the universities or in their garages and their homes, they could not find a way to get money to turn those compounds into vaccines. Because the richest people that lived here, they were merchants, traders. The traders would say, you needed me to give you $10,000. How will I give you $10,000 when if you commercialize this idea, that idea can be stolen by your neighbor? And if it's stolen by your neighbor, what do I benefit? So I will just wait for the first person to spend this money so that we can copy. But Americans now figure out that by having a property rights system, giving a little bit of protection to that professor, to that inventor, to that tinkerer, to that garage guy, there is going to be a propensity for the merchant who has the money to say, I'll take this money from the pillow, I'll give it to you, because we have already gotten a protection of exclusivity over the next 21 years. And by marrying that protection and that ingenuity, they were able now to turn that idea into a vaccine. And that is how the innovation system began to happen. So what is happening here, that property rights unlocks capital. Without this property rights, capital will not come. Just like young people in Africa are unlocking capital by simply leaving African jurisdictions to go and incorporate in London and Delaware, where there are intellectual property rights that protect those businesses. And now people will now feel confident that they have the protection to make those investments. There is a result. When you bring that property rights, you bring that capital, innovation happens. And that innovation is what we can capture through aggregate of economic activity, which is basically what you get from innovation. So that is the reason why America fixed it. And now you see it, innovation happens, economic activity improves, efficiency on the utilization of factors of production advances, and then beautiful things happen. The GDP grows up. So property rights, capital, innovation. For the Igbo nation, we need to see how do we deepen our property rights. I'm not necessarily looking at this from the angle of looking at Nigeria. I'm actually looking at this from the angle of how do, let's say, the Nigeria Bar Association from the southeastern part of Nigeria, how do they understand that to a large extent, the inability for property rights to work for us could be an impediment on the efficiency of our mercantile system. And of course, when that property rights work, capital flows. It flows, and then innovation happens. That innovation now means we can fix print, because innovation goes back to that construct of fixing market frictions. I'll explain it a little bit here. Ndubuisi just landed right now in Enugu, and let's assume there is no family member or there is no restaurant in Enugu. I have only majorly one option. I have to begin knocking at every door in Enugu, looking for someone who has food to sell. And the same time I'm knocking, market systems are inherently inefficient and imperfect. There is also somebody who has food to sell, and he's also waiting and hoping that somebody knocks at her door. You agree with me because of information asymmetry, a scenario where I know that I'm hungry, he knows that he has a food, but we cannot come into an equilibrium point so that transaction can take place. So a system that is extremely imperfect. I'm hungry, yes, I'm walking around looking for somebody who has food to sell. But somebody says, that is not a very good system. I am going to start a business, and that business is called Mama Nkechi's Restaurant. The Mama Nkechi now opens a business, and that business, Mama Nkechi Restaurant, makes it possible that next time Ndubuisi is hungry, he doesn't have to be knocking at every door. Ndubuisi now goes to Mama Nkechi's Restaurant, and she offers nkwobi and everything, and I pay her. The money I'm paying her is compensating her for fixing that friction that existed between myself and her, because originally I could not find her to serve me that food because she did not have a company that would fix that friction which I needed to be fixed. Aggregate of economic activity is based on this constellation. Ability for firms to fix frictions on their specific missions for consumers, producers, demand, and supply. The same thing happens in banking. You've got some money with you in the bank. You got some money with you. Let's assume there is no bank. You look for somebody who will want to lend that money. Say you have 1 million naira in Aba. You don't have anything to do with that 1 million naira in the next one. You say, okay, can I find somebody I can lend this 1 million naira who will pay me 10% on interest? At the same time, you're looking. You may not find, but there is somebody who needs 1 million, but both of you cannot come into an equilibrium point for transaction to take place. What happens? A young lady wakes up and says, I'm going to start up a bank. I call it the Good Alaigbo Bank Limited. And now you take that 1 million, you give to that bank, the bank pays you that 10%. The bank now lend that money to that person that needed it for her poultry business and charges 17%. That delta of 7 is the compensation the bank has imposed for fixing that friction that existed between the man who has the money and the person who needed that money. Alaigbo has to have a mechanism through market system to fix friction, and fixing that friction means having more do tanks than think tanks. In other words, going beyond just ideas into building products and services, and building those products and services require fixing the mechanic system of capital through property rights. And that property rights what unlocks capital, and capital is what unlocks innovation. And innovation we are talking about here is fixing banking, food, agriculture, and other elements. And as we do that, we will now see a very beautiful nation. And the moment will begin to rise. There is just no other paths that great nations have happened. Our elders, the great generation, has given us a very great validation of the necessity of knowledge. We cannot advance if we do not build knowledge. If you go back to the Bible says that when Moses appeared before the Israelites, that they marveled because he has studied under Pharaoh. The best school system in the world was in Egypt, and Egypt ruled the world. It has always been established that your knowledge capacity correlates with your economic ability. So pharaohs ruled their time, and Pharaoh had the best school system. The best astrologers, thinkers were in Egypt. Move through the time of the Greek Empire, you also see the same thing. If you go to the Kos Island right at the time of just at the Mediterranean Sea, if you travel to Greece, you see the old shipping lines they built. Our knowledge has to transform into fixing frictions that exist around us, because that is actually where you get economic activity. It's not just a constellation of talking. The good news for us is that we have an elemental entrepreneurial capitalist legends in our community. I mean, we just have that entrepreneurial capitalism. We are Abundi. I am what this as well. I'm a now business. So you can innocent motors, you can so many industries, you can all of them, all of them. So the question is how can that property rights unlock bigger capital? And as we unlock that bigger capital, we can deepen that map. I'm going to round it up just to make sure it's not too long. Key thing here, I think that the biggest opportunity in our land is not waiting for Nigeria. It's actually going back to fix what I have called the land velocity. The most unfortunate thing that we have in Nigeria today is that those that have assets like land, they are not in the balance sheet of Nigeria. And the reason why those assets are not in the balance sheet of Nigeria, because we have not built the property rights necessary to help us to unlock it. I mean, I'm on your view. All of us, most of us, all of us are from villages. There are lands, there are properties, farmlands. So you see a man who has 100 hectares of land, but in the village, we still call him a farmer because the 100 hectares have not entered any record. Some of us are working in the startup space. Imagine a scenario if the 5 states in the southeast Nigeria say, we're going to bring all these startups, go into rural communities, ward to ward, local government to local government, map all these farmlands, record them in the Ministry of Lands, We are not going to call them tax because federal government may start coming that they own a portion and say, hey, when you record this land, it belongs to Mazu Demba. It belongs to Mazi Kemefla. Now, Mazi Kemefla has 100 hectares of land inherited from his fathers or from his ancestors, or even a community land. So this community, you have 100 hectares. But you need good schools. You need better hospital. Can you sell this portion of it? Or, there are just so many ways. This is what America did. This is what the German. If you go through human history, that property right propelled and made it easier that this land can have velocity. In other words, it can move from one hand to the other with ease. And by moving from one hand to the other, those people we think today they don't have any means, all of them actually become richer. And that means the banks will now open offices, branches in the rural areas because our rural economy will advance. And as that happens, many beautiful things will happen. And I still believe, and I know this will not be very, very popular, but one of the key elements within the property rights pillar is that we need to document those lands and assets and put a small fee on them. The reason why South Africa is budgeting 152 billion when Nigeria cannot even hit 30 billion is because every property in South Africa at the beginning of the year, somebody paid something. We all own mansions. We all own those big mansions in villages. We all have them around the Igbo nation. If you go to Hafia Bareba, Lewi, Tem, Yovim, yet, the government, they won't able. You go to the local government, they want a pension. But it's in a mansion now. So the question there is this: how can we fix that element? And that is where I'm expecting our leadership to say, can we pay even 0.1% of all our farmlands and properties into that local government so that the local government will not have resources to advance our rural economy? And if we do that, many beautiful things will happen. So there's so many things that we can look into to wrap up the capital. But I do not want to come here to start postulating on policy making. But one I would like to point out is, if we have a stronger property rights regime in southeastern Nigeria, Alaigbo, we are going to see investors come. And I like the model they use in Israel. The government of Enugu will say, I have 1 billion naira. I want to use it to build a new economic system for Enugu. I am not going to make that investment directly, but I have some young people that have been investing in startups, investing in SMEs. They are here in Enugu, and they have done very well. We are going to give them 100 million from that. As they are investing, we're investing. In other words, we don't want to go alone. We want to go with them. Because these people have fiduciary responsibility to make sure that they can actually have returns. Government co-invest through them so that people don't receive that money and think it's part of their Alaigbo cake. And as we do that, there's so many changes that we can see, and we will see our economic system change. We don't have enough graduates to even hire in Alaigbo. If we have an economic system that performs and that is optimized to fire at the cylinder that it has to fire, we don't even have enough graduates. So this whole nexus of unemployment is something that is happening because we have underperformed. In America today, how many millions do they graduate every year? Is it 8 million kids? Yet today there's nobody to hire. I have a friend here in Chicago. He closed his shop because he can't find people to hire. There's a lady in Detroit, Michigan. She has to close her healthcare service because she couldn't find somebody. If you know how to make coffee in Starbucks, they'll give you scholarship to go to university because they can't have any means of retaining staff. So they now have to offer all kinds of incentives that making coffee will offer you a 4-year scholarship. Yet we say we have massive unemployment because we have not built necessary pillars that can help us to unlock massive. Because if those pillars are built, we just magically realize that we even need to go and import more people to come and work on Alaigbo. And let me also note here, and this I believe vividly, that it is also something from Ovim. I have benefited significantly. If you come to Ovim, we have the Ovim Secondary Technical School. I'm using it because I benefited from it. When I was there for my secondary school, the villagers, Ovim Community League will hire teachers and send them to the government. We never really depend on government to supply the teachers we need in our schools. We basically will pay, go and get graduates and now put them and inject them into public school. The man who taught me mathematics is teaching at MIT today. The man who taught me physics today is teaching at the Federal Polytechnic in Rwanda. The man who taught me biology graduated from OAU, biochemistry. So at the end of the day, you just keep having extremely brilliant young people coming out of schools, and most of them end up going to university and do well. So we invest significantly in basic education. China invests 99% of his, make sure 99% of kids go to primary school. America is about 90% in primary secondary. But Nigeria, our focus has always been university education, neglecting basic education. My point is this, that there is just no reason why in Alaigbo we will allow our little kids, where they need the best possible primary and secondary education, to go into those schools where they pay teachers $50 a month. It is a shame. And we cannot allow the least possible parameter in the world to govern the great people like the Igbo people. So what I'll ask you is this: as we look into this pillar, knowledge remains critical. If government of Nigeria says $50, how can your own community do what the great generation did when they did not even have any budget from government, but rich men brought up money and gave out to build schools and maternities, and through their benevolent vision, most of us are where we are. Because I attended a school that was built for my community. Imagine if they did not do that. Many of us would have been lost without an opportunity to advance. So that is the purpose and that is the mission. And as we do that, I believe that we should hit $500 billion by 2030 for the greater Alaigbo. Nigeria's GDP today, I think is around 500 or so, 500 billion. I just think that the 5 eastern states of Nigeria can attain that alone by 2030. That 2030 means understanding that here is Alaigbo, and here is the home diaspora, and here is the international. The international diaspora can include me, who is in America. The home diaspora will include the Igbo people, the second after the indigenous tribe in any part of Nigeria outside Southeast. They are in Ibadan, they are in Lagos, they are in Kano, they are in Ogadagu, they are in Nairobi. And let's just say all of them within Africa, we call them the home diaspora. How do they now contribute in what happens in Alaigbo? That bridge has to be built. The international diaspora, those they say outside Africa, the home diaspora, the Igbos outside, southeastern Nigeria, of course, the diaspora, but they are within the Africa. We need to build a bridge because these people are some of the most influential, rich, and dominant businessmen and women that we actually have in Africa. There is no place they are not, but we do not pay attention to them. They are in Lagos, own estates, manage different class assets, but how do we connect them back here? We are targeting some of us here in diaspora, America. Fine, we do remittance, but remittance is not the only thing. Here is what I believe we have to have a concerted effort so that we connect them. And if you then bring them together, just rounding up in 3 minutes, you now have agriculture, you have healthcare services, and we can bring abundance in that beautiful land. And as we do that, we move from the Adam Smith economic philosophy to Umunoma economic philosophy. The Umunoma economic philosophy is what has helped us as a people after the vagaries of war to rise. The Igbo apprenticeship system remains one of the finest moments, remains the finest economic system that you can imagine. I think in one of the works I did in Harvard, the world saw it at something that can change the trajectory of a people, and we have the data to actually show that it works. From those men that are doing leather works in Aba today, to those farmers in Abakaleke in the rice farm, from those in the palm plantations in Owerri, to those in Obete for the Akwete market. So those living in those mansions in Newi, boys and girls, men and women, across all the southeastern part of Nigeria, they're actually looking for us as those of us that are privileged in Credibility Group and beyond to bring that pillar that will help to advance the wealth of our communities. Not just that you have risen, but that all can rise because we will build on the Umunoma economics. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.
May I say hello?
Yeah, we can hear you, Chief.
Yes, Prof. Good morning in American time, afternoon Nigerian time. For those of us who are here, we have a good turnout. My name is Godwin Wazurike. I'm the president of Credibility Group. And I want to say this without any fear of contradiction. Prof, we are lucky to have you as our member. We are lucky to have you as an Igbo man. We are lucky to have you in communication, because knowledge without communication dies with the person. We have listened and we are proud. May I also ask people to comment? Those who have one comment or the other, please go ahead so that all of us will be learning from each other. We have an eminent group right now. Thank you.
Good afternoon, my fellow Igbos. Are you hearing me?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
We can.
Okay, I am Uzo Mudemba. I'm calling from Lagos. Prof, you've really done a good work here, but there's an experience I want to share with my fellow Igbos. One day I was traveling from Atlanta to San Francisco. And then I was on a Delta flight, and then behind us in the other cabin was something that it looked like a marketplace. There was commotion, people were talking, people were all the way to the flight. And I had a short nap and I woke up and the noise was still there. So I called the air hostess and said, what's going on behind us? And she said, don't you know? She mentioned something. There's a cultural festival that every Jewish person on planet Earth goes back to Israel once a year. That these people, their family members, that the tribal members, and so opportunity to be together was so exciting that all the way they just cannot stop talking. Jewish people, a cultural thing, bringing them together. Those cultural ties that bind the Igbo people in the olden days, but now asina Igbo Kwole, and that's it. I can't challenge Hindi Igbo Kuru. They've already said it. Nani Igbo Ibemshi. They can't doubt in here Igbo Kuru. You must do it. And so over the years, we've seen a combination of factors taking off this cultural tie. Can we, the Igbos of today, because culture is dynamic, can we come up with a concept that says, okay, Inyekele, something like that? Because Igbos are known to be very strong in their faith. Something that says what Americans would call Thanksgiving. We find an Igbo word for it. And then find a time. You see, the Women August meeting is something close to it. But because it's women, and because we've not really looked at it intellectually, that is a very powerful force. Very powerful. Most of what Prof has said now are things that can be communicated at a very local, cultural level, and it will have meaning. So if we can look at it, and my thinking is something like January 6th, something early January, so that Ndulotara Christmas can also combine with it. Now think about the economy that will create at home. Hotel bookings, people will come back and build hotels in their communities because people are coming. People don't have homes, will find a hotel. Think of the economic impact. Taxi drivers that will have business at that time. Think about the hospitality industry in Alaigbo. When Igbos in Kenya, Igbos in Cameroon, Igbos in America, Igbos in Lagos, Igbos in Kaduna, come back home to Igbo land for that cultural festival. Well, this is a food for thought. Let's think about it and have some intellectual discourse around it. So we'll create something that's away from what currently exists, and then make that so that every alternation with town unions, so that every town union will have their town union meeting fixed at that time, so that the impact of this will be that on that day, Nigeria will shut down. Because when Igbos in Sokoto, in Maduguri, in Lagos, go back home, as Nandi Bala Lolo, the Nigerian economy would stop. So that anybody who wants to mess with Igbos will say, no, be careful with these people. They have so much power. We don't know the power we have that will sustain the economy of Nigeria. So that day, Mesha everywhere, na village, then give man. So these are things, I have other things I want to discuss with a select group of Igbos. There are things we can do to reinvent the wheels. Our forefathers were so good in this. Unfortunately, due to a combination of factors over the years, we've jettisoned some of those things that are so important to us as Igbos. Okay, gentlemen, Ota Hamnolu today. Thank you very much for the time.
Day one, Professor.
Yes.
I am Dr. Emeko Kenzo. Why thanking you for this very impressive work you've done. I actually can a little bit of decorum. Now here let me suggest that from your end, you ask anybody who wants to speak to raise their hand, and then you can identify the person, and then I accept that as a standard. Then you're going to be the one looking at people who've raised their hands, and everybody should have a maximum of 2 minutes to make their input. Back to your presentation. This presentation looks, my father, I said, this is too good. Too good in the sense that it looks like the proverbial when they and we're meeting about who will build the cats. Yes, land is at the center of what it is we need to unlock Igbo land. But who bequeaths that land? Who delivers the land? What structures do we need to create? Or for us to be able to energize our cultural structures, or for us to be able to energize our governance structures. Now, for this to happen, which comes first? Is it to be able to make certain that I wear the proper politics, and I wear the people who can be able to think and understand what it is you're trying to, put across? I think you need to look at that a little more deeper so that in providing solutions, Prof. Village at a particular day. Igalatan on a Sunday, motor game maybe Igabakwa village on Monday. Until we're able to get the politics of our homeland right, I dare to think that every other thing might just be in abeyance. That would be my input for now, but great paper. Kudos to you, sir.
Okay, thank you so much, sir. So just like you, I will just moderate it here. But let me say on that land, we work in this startup space. If you just go back to your village, let's say through the local government, under the state minister of land, and I think minister of land, every state will minister of land, and you have a kind of a power through the State House of Assembly. So how they use smartphone and GPS. They go into every community. So to the ha map wire, tier GPS, tier GIS, a put you in a map, a register with the local government. A register with local government, register against the community or the individual. That's it. And then the power of the land will rest with the government. You can't do away with government. So we can have a kind of a marketplace. That's the terminology we use in this tech space, where you want to sell 10% of that land. It could be transferred from that to another person. Everything I do very visible. Removing that friction will improve the velocity. Okay, somebody can buy and somebody can sell. Technically, I don't think it's difficult. The one that I know that is difficult is maybe in future, which I still believe. I'll be very happy if somebody comes to me and says, hey, let's pay 0.5% of your property worth, Alaigbo, as a contribution to the government. You know, we may say we can't do that because we don't trust these guys. But remember the time of the old people's club, Naba, where men were contributing money to building Mbakwe's airport. I mean, Chief Simon Mbakwe's airport. So we are very, very generous people when we have leaders that we can trust. And nothing said that Credibility Group can now find the people that can become governance institution for that land management. If we trust them, we will do whatever they ask us to do, because we have built everything through communal effort. So because Nigeria has poisoned our spirit does not mean that innate Igbo spirit of Onyaga na one year does not exist. So that's just what I have a longer work on that, how that protocol can move from strategic to operational. So we can look at a different place. Let's go to Mr. Uchenna Ewelike, please go ahead.
Well, thank you very much, Prof, for this very wonderful presentation. I also want to thank my elder brother, Chief Wazirike, for inviting me to be part of this discussion. I've also shared it across board to my colleagues, because we have a structure here we call our Weekend Igbo. It's a structure for Igbo people in the health system. Uche Olike is my name. I'm a health economist. I'm also a public health physician. I am going to break down this submission in just 3 areas. First is that we failed to sustain the social solidarity post-Civil War, because just like somebody said, I am a product of a community school built by a community. So one of the things we have to go back to is how to sustain that social solidarity upon which the foundations were built after the Civil War, of which most of us benefited from. I was having a discussion with somebody on the issue of Ndigbo, and I said this: Igbos are the only group of people that love themselves more than other people in this country, because by virtue of my work, I've traveled to every part of this country. It is only an Igbo man that can take somebody from the village and come to Abuja and go to where and make him a millionaire and a billionaire. It's only an Igbo man. The only problem we have is Igbos don't organize. We don't organize. Maybe people found out that our social solidarity was working, and we didn't sustain that social solidarity. That's one of the major problems we've had. I was in South Korea between 2016 to 2017.
Okay, I don't know whether his background noise.
Not my background. I think somebody needs to mute.
Okay.
I think so. Let all mute until you want to speak, please.
Okay. Yes. Let me just. Yeah. Okay. Well, go ahead, Maz, please, Mr. Chenna.
Okay. So, what made South Korea different is that they told us that they anchored on what they call a concept of social solidarity and what they call collective intelligence. And that collective intelligence is what the Igbos were doing post-Civil War, that made them to build schools, build technical schools, build markets, build industries and all that. We didn't sustain them. The second point is leadership failure. I say this with all sense of humility and sincerity. There is serious leadership failure across board in Igbo land. And because of the way the country is structured, I am a government person, so I know why I say this, I say. because of the way government is structured, we need strong leadership. It is not everything that is an exclusive list in the country. Let's assume that there's a strong leadership in the 5 states in the Southeast, and we focus on at least those things that are not in the exclusive list, that are on concurrent list. Education, healthcare, for instance, and agriculture. We will be able to rejig the economy and meet up that economic base you are talking about between South Africa and all that. Post-Civil War, South Koreans were exporting people to Vietnam during that period. We were having that civil war thereabouts. And they were exporting people, human resource. They return money back to the country, just like we have a lot of diasporans now who are giving diaspora remittances, and is increasing the economic base in the country, more especially in the Southeast. We have not been able to sustain that. So people must be able to develop interest on how leadership recruitment in the Southeast takes place. Why should a state like Borno, that is fighting war, be building a world-class secondary schools and primary schools, which you and I know are the foundation? And we are creating mods as schools in other parts of the country. So it's a serious leadership problem. And we must be able to put our hands, put our voices in leadership recruitment in the Southeast. That's the second thing. Then the third thing is our contribution, our individual contribution on all this. Somebody said, maybe we can close shops, have a time that we can come down during August meetings and all that. Good and fine. But let's identify areas of our own personal comparative advantage on what we can bring home. Let me give myself an instance. Today, every time I'm free.
Hello, good afternoon.
Today, anytime that I'm free,
good afternoon.
I go to Imo State. Please let me round up, please. No. Anytime I'm free, I go to Imo State University in the Department of Public Health in College of Medicine to teach them health economics. I do that because there's paucity of knowledge and lack of human resource there, and I do that pro bono. Yeah. So there are a lot of Nigerians who are medical doctors, who are in academics, who are in different people in Igbo. How can we galvanize our individual resources and some form of cohorts to be coming down home to be helping the system? We can come home and say, this kind of secondary school government is for human being, for Koko to attend. This kind of health centers, now you see politicians, they come down and say they want to flag off health center they have built. They know that their daughter cannot deliver in that health center. So we need to put heads together, all of us, and begin to challenge some of these things while we come home to contribute in areas we have comparative advantage. For instance, Prof, you have a lot of advantage on issue of this land use and all that. We can call stakeholders meeting. Oga Wazirike has a lot of linkages with Ohanes and Igbo. They can call in any meeting that governors forum are having in the Southeast. They give you a slot of 5 minutes. You go and speak to them on those areas who have comparative advantage, because don't be surprised. This is my personal experience. Some of these people who are in leadership position do not know as much as we think that they do.
Absolutely. Agree on that.
So we need to bring down those areas that we have as our best down to Southeast. And in that way, we'll be able to achieve meaningful results. So I want to thank you for galvanizing these discussions. Let's take it a bit forward from here and see how we can practicalize it. Maybe one time again, we can have face contacts, maybe during Christmas and all that, fix a place. People want Southeast to develop. A lot of people Alaigbo develop. We are not happy with the way things are going. And I think that it is only human beings that can change this dynamics.
Absolutely.
All those things. And I also want to thank the organizers of this meeting for this wonderful discussion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Nasiri, please, go ahead, Nasiri. Let's, we just have about 11 more minutes to round up, please, so that we'll be out of here 15 minutes past the hour. Nasiri, Hilary, please, go ahead. Are you there, Nosiri? If you are not there, let's go to Emmanuel Mado. Emmanuel, please go ahead. Emmanuel, are you there? Okay. Okay, go ahead, please. Go ahead. Yeah, we can't hear you. We can't hear you, but we can see you are speaking. No, I don't think it's working. Let's go to Dr. Okechukwu Okozi, please. Go ahead, please. Doctor, please go ahead. You have to unmute yourself first. I hope I'm communicating. I just want to make sure that I'm not the one that's muted. Okay. Emmanuel, are you back? We can't hear you. Okay. Please, can somebody confirm that you can hear me, please?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, so that means that
I can hear you.
Okay, great. Okay, Mr. Aloy Ezugu, please go ahead. Go ahead, please.
Nosri is here. Nosri
okay, Nosri, go ahead. Go ahead.
I can
Let's
hear
go fast.
The
floor is yours, Nosri.
Okay.
Nosri, go ahead, Nosri.
I'm our own language.
Okay.
First of all, actually, mega appreciate for this wonderful.
Prof, I am protesting. I am protesting. I am telling you not to go in Igbo because we need to understand what he's saying. Yeah.
Emmanuel Madu, please. Okay. Yeah, but no, okay. Let's just see who are those. Aloy is not there, and Boniface. Go ahead, Boniface.
Prof. Aloy is here. Prof. Aloy
okay, go ahead, please.
All right. Thank you very much, Prof. This is. I want to first of all acknowledge the fact that it's not easy to start a journey like this, because you know, if you look at all the dynamics in Igbo lands, there's a lot of factors that are pointing against our development, especially when you come to the elites. Now, I joined when you were talking about land use and how it can impact on the GDP of the government. Now, looking at that factor only, that is, because we have a limited time, I want to see it as a very big opportunity, but it cannot be achieved under the kind of regime, both cultural and governance we have in our towns and villages. These people, when they collect taxes or so-called payee, we all know what they do with it. So then it means we have to do a lot on our recruitment processes to make sure that only those who have a track record of trust are brought into governance, so that when we want to get you know, our economy revived, the money we make out of our natural resources are not pilfered away. It will create more problems for our communities, because this is the only resources some of us fall back to in our fatherland. If you go there, that's the only thing you can count as your own. Government has taken up of every other thing, opportunities. You go there and the politicians look at you as a stranger. So it's only the land you have. So, but if we have a government that is caring and that respects the our collective welfare, I believe is one way of, you know, accelerating the economy of Alaigbo. So this the little I want to chip, because that is where I started following this discussion. I also want to encourage us that, you know, since this has started, we should not just end it after this meeting. There should be a strategy to follow up and follow through and make sure that this effort, which has so well been started, is not allowed to dissipate into oblivion. Thank you very much, Prof. And
thank you so much on behalf of Credibility Group. Let me just say that the land belongs to the owners or the communities, that you are mapping them, organizing them. I don't think that government is going to take anything. No, it belongs to the owner. The point is this: if you have 100 hectares of land in, let's say, Ugweke today, they'll still see you as a very, very poor person because it's not in any record. But technically, you shouldn't be poor because you have assets. So, but if that land is in the ledger somewhere, you can use it to take some credits or take a loan as necessary. So there needs to be a governance system. And I agree with all the comments here that even in some cases, the leaders that we are expecting to do this, they may not even have that awareness. And that is where it's very critical for us to do that. But I also want to point out, looking at my data and the work we've done in this space, not just in Nigeria, there is this mentality in Nigeria that government is rich, that Nigeria is a rich country, and that things are not working because the leaders are really, really wicked. I want to challenge that hypothesis by saying that Nigeria is actually a very, very, very poor country. I'm not talking about that we don't have potentials. We have latent potentials. But when you are dealing with 50, let's say you are dealing with a budget of 30 billion for 210 million people, and South Africa is spending 152 billion for 60 million. There is no way or how efficient you will be for you to deliver the kind of value that South Africa will deliver to its own citizens. So you could be very prudent. You could be extremely, very, very good in operating and managing money. But 30 billion for 210 million will never give you a result for 152 billion for 60 million. So our problem goes beyond management. Our problem is actually how do we grow the pie so that that budget in your local government, in your state, can widen. So that is where, while we are trying to make sure we are prudent, we also have to look at mechanisms that can help us to expand economic opportunity. And during the operational part of any execution, in that chart I provided, can we even ask these governors that when they are running, I put it here, you should, anything above $10,000 equivalent, that there should be a general public ledger that any money that is not security related should be made public. In other words, at the end of every quarter, any money that Abia State government has spent that's more than $10,000, let me say 5 million naira, somebody can go to the Abia State government website and see where that money was spent. And for the security one, selected eminent leaders in the Igbo community and journalists can be called every quarter to look at how that money was spent. When we ask for that kind of governance from these elected or politicians, say, will you do this? It becomes a vehicle for them to run for an office. And once they're elected, we tell them, you say that any expenditure that is more than 5 million, that you have to post what you did with it on your website within a quarter so that the citizens will see how you're utilizing their resources. But today, we don't ask them to be accountable. And because we do not push them to be accountable, they just play us. So, Mr. Nasir, are you there now?
Emmanuel is back. This is Emmanuel, Prof.
Okay, go ahead, please. Emmanuel, go ahead, please.
My Prof, I'll be very brief. I know you have another meeting in the next 30 minutes or something. So my thing is this. This is Chimeze Madu from Texas. So we have had this Zoom meeting, and we have not come up with what are actionable items going forward. One. Then, like Prof said, Nigeria is not a rich country, given our population and our resources. During the construction of Anambra Airport, I made a suggestion to the building committee. Can I get a businessman who can advertise in one of the toilets, and it is his duty to make sure the toilet is up to standard? He can put a little advert. Government doesn't have to spend the money, and the businessman will sign a contract to maintain that toilet for 1 year. And it saves everybody money, saves the airport becomes maintained. Another thing is that our leaders need to be honest with us. And that's why we're able to trust them and bring back this money to help them do the development. And the next thing I have in my list is the burial ceremony we have in Igbo land. The elders need to look at this. It's becoming ridiculous. It is an unhealthy competition. Burial is a solemn occasion. I know I do not have a right to tell somebody what to do with his money, but the young men around are looking at this ostentatious display of wealth, and they are being led into a lot of vices, just to meet up what the society expects of them. Can our elders please take a look and put a maximum cap on burial? There is no best burial in this world, and there will never be. Thank you, guys.
Okay, thank you, and thank you so much. So, just to respect people's time, I'm going to round up. Let's go to Mr. Boniface Wabuko, please. Go ahead, Mr. Boniface. If you are there, so that we can hand over to Chief Gode. If Boniface is not there, I think everyone, you need to unmute yourself. I don't think your microphone is connected. Okay, go ahead, sir.
I'm hearing you. I've unmuted myself.
Okay, go ahead. I can hear you now.
I'm not mute. I've unmuted myself.
No, I said you can go ahead.
Hello?
Now. We can hear you, sir. We can hear you now, sir. We can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much, Prof. And thank you for your presentation. Now, just as the last speaker said, I'm not going to take much of our time. I would have spoken for quite some time, but I'll just make them brief. For us to progress and develop our economy in Igbo land, we now know that one thing that has kept most investors out is security. This needs to be attended to in such a way that investors can come in. When I mention investors, Igbo, even Igbo citizens who are outside Igbo land, doing business outside Igbo land, are included. Most of them do not want to invest in Igbo land because of security. They will say, if I go to do that and my people know my life is in danger. So we have to do something about security. I would want you to address this and also address the fact, please, Igbo citizens are extremely rich worldwide. Is there any economic principle we can apply? And you have come close a little to it in your presentation, which will make them pay some sort of money into the Igbo land as, I don't know whether to call it royalty or tax or whatever. Is there a way they can be contributing? You put it in such a way that people used to donate money to construct this, to develop that. But now, can we standardize this, that for people who have businesses, investments outside Igbo land, which other people are enjoying, and Igbo people are not privileged to enjoy such things, can we develop an economic principle which we as Igbos will bring up, if it is not existing in the world, that will make them pay some money to develop Igbo land? Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. And I mean, Mr. Chief Udemba, I think would have been a very great, he provided a good case study on, I mean, there are people that have massively invested in Igbo land. I think Chief, his headquarters is actually in his village in Imo State. So I don't know whether he's still here. So what I'm saying here is, if we actually provide the vehicle, the efficiency on the utilization and allocation of factors of production, which the Igbo people are very good, they will come. And that is where that leadership from our state capitals will come. Because if you go to Abia State now and you say, I want to clean HA road or school road in Aba, and this is the opportunity that is there. Just like Emmanuel Madu noted here, that he was providing something to Anambra State about toilets in the new airport. People will take opportunities. The problem here is that we do not even know where these opportunities are because the government, to a large extent, is not communicating. I was still in primary school, just getting primary school, when Mbakwe would come to TV and he will carry a piece of paper. I was telling you, because those days they will ask you to go and tell your mother to bring 5 kobo or whatever, that, that they needed money to build a palm plantation or power plant. He would say, this is the balance sheet of Imo State today, that he shot down by 1,000 naira here, that you get done something from your teacher, your principal, or your headmaster, that they need to fill it up. So it was open because he was not hiding anything through security vote. And because he was not hiding anything in security vote, during the next meeting at the People's Club in Aba, I've taken time to read through all these things. Men will say, hey, see, governor said he needed 2,000 naira. Can we just raise money and send him 2,000 to Owerri? So that level of trust is what we are asking for now. And if that trust comes, that wealth, all of us know, we have the wealth, that those things will now be deployed so that we can build our community. If you go to Ohafia and Arochukwu and you say that Aba doesn't have money to clean things, you just ask yourself, most of the wealth in Ohafia and Arochukwu is them. All of them, they made it in Aba. And how can you say that the people that live in Aba made that kind of wealth to go back to those and build those mansions that Aba doesn't have money? So that leadership is where I believe that the Credibility Group will also invest in it to break that linkage to make it possible. And then on the security, I believe vividly that if we give the young Igbo young men and women a roadmap into a better future, all these security things will go. I'm not trying to trivialize it because I'm not even in a position to talk, but just because I was asked to moderate this. Like I said, we don't produce enough graduates that we even need for the opportunities that exist. If we do this land management system, you could create more than 1 million jobs from ward level to state level in Alaigbo. Because when you create it, you are opening up trading, you are opening up property rights, you are opening up legal work, you are opening up survey work, you're opening technology servers that will manage them. So all of a sudden, you could actually create more than at least $80 to $100 billion worth of economic activity that will create so many jobs in the land. So that is a latent opportunity. And when those jobs are coming, I believe that good job will challenge the bad one, which so many of them are going to vices. I've not mentioned the security aspect because I just think it's not just good to say, let them, how do we stop security without, we have to offer a better future, a better roadmap to young people. And if we offer that, they will now say, hey, why would I go and risk my life taking all these dangerous paths when there are better things? So we need to invest in that to make sure that we take care of that. So Chief Godi, I don't want to take because we're already out of time here. Looking at the time, this was scheduled for 1 hour. So please, I want to yield to Chief Godi Waziriko or any member of the Credibility Group. Thank you so much, gentlemen and ladies. Is Chief still here? And if it's not there, can somebody just close us and so that we can?
Yeah, I'm here and I'm speaking.
Okay,
Prof, thank you very much. Yes, thank you very, very much. The chairman of the Economic Planning Committee, Dr. Ekekwe, will say thank you. The mobilizer and the mobile man, Chief Ndubuisi, Chief for now, like here, but I'm going today. Our Secretary General, Steve Wabuko, who was the one who initiated the idea of getting non-members of this credibility to join. And I want to thank all those who joined from outside. From the universities, we said the relevant groups, and they're all here. We say thank you very much. This is the first stage. We will continue. We will still organize another one. God bless you endlessly. Thank you very much.
And thank you so much. Please, the recorded Zoom link is also on the board here, and we share that in the Credibility Group. But I just posted it also on the chat, so you could just pick it up. Thank you so much, sir. And thank you for the opportunity, gentlemen and ladies. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.